great privilege to introduce the gathering to our speaker for the session, Dr. Anirudha Malpani. I request her to grace the dais. It's an honor to introduce our guest for the session. Sir is an MBBS graduate with an MD in obstetrics and gynecology. Presently, he is medical director of Malpani Infertility Clinic. He has held various eminent positions like Director of Solidarity Investment Advisors Mumbai. An expert in the domain of angel investment, he has been angel investor and board member of Evobi Private Limited Bangalore and Patient Education and Awareness Services. Sir has been medical director for Health Education Library for People, which is India's first consumer health education resource center. I request Dr. Anirudha Malpani to kindly enlighten our delegates.
Okay, so good morning, guys. Is this cool? So I'm going to be talking about digital doctoring. And typically when we talk about doctor, what is the first kind of image which comes to our mind? Correct? You have someone who's going to look after you, you're not feeling well, someone in the past, of course, this was a few centuries ago, the doctor would make a home visit, would hold your hand, would make sure that the family felt that everything which was possible, which was being done, was being done. The doctor had a deep personal connection with the patient. There was a lot of trust. You trusted that no matter what, the doctor would do what was right for you. Unfortunately, in those days, there really wasn't much the doctor could do. There weren't antibiotics, there wasn't much, and yet the doctor was trusted and the medical profession was held in high regard. Today, things have changed a little bit, haven't they? Whether you read about newspaper articles about doctors getting bashed up, whether you read about what's happening, today patients want to be much more proactive, much more in charge. And often the ingredient of trust between the doctor and the patient, I think, has gone away because patients now want to tell doctors what to do. Can anyone read this? Because lots of patients are internet doctors of medicine because obviously they've got their degree from the Google University. Now, I should say one thing. A lot of doctors get very irritated and pissed off and all kinds of things. And this, in fact, is what some doctors have. That, I spent 5.5 years in medical college. I've spent 5 years actually doing surgery. So I happen to be the expert in your room and your Google search is not good enough. This is why sometimes that gap between the doctor and the patient is increasing day on day. Doctors feel patients don't respect their expertise. And patients don't trust doctors, partly because what the media has done. Doctors take cuts, doctors take kickbacks, doctors take commissions, doctors send you for unnecessary lab tests, doctors do surgery even though you don't require the surgery, doctors will put you in an ICU even though you don't need it, doctors will charge 25 lakhs for treating someone who has dengue without anyone understanding why that bill became that much. Everything gets very distorted. And unfortunately, doctors are very scared to speak up. It's very easy to paint the doctor as the bad boy because anything goes wrong with the patient, obviously it's the doctor's fault. Of course the doctor was negligent. Of course the doctor did not bother. And this has become an increasing problem. As a result of which, a lot of doctors start thinking this is what patients are doing, that patients are going doctor shopping. And doctors kind of feel unloved and unrespected. And what did I spend 8 years in medical college doing if that's the way I'm going to be treated? And I think this is a situation which is actually going to go from bad to worse if we don't step in and do something about this. This is sad. This is definitely not good for doctors because this is not the reason we took up medicine. We're willing to spend 10 years of our life. We did it because we love patients. We want them to get better. And trust me, it's actually extremely bad for patients. Because if patients can't trust that the doctor will do what is right for them, that patient is not going to get well. That patient is always going to keep on second guessing. They will talk to an uncle in the US, they will check out Dr. Google, they will do all kinds of things. And then what is the doctor's approach going to be? You don't trust me? Go to hell. Go find another doctor. Or you want to take treatment? Why don't you take treatment from Dr. Google? Why don't you get Dr. Google to do the surgery for you? Why are you coming to me? It's not a healthy situation and it's high time we did something about it. Unfortunately, a lot of people think of doctors like this, that doctors are dinosaurs, that doctors haven't been able to keep up with the times, that doctors still use pen and paper and illegible handwriting so that no one knows exactly what they're advising, no one knows what's happening, and that's a common complaint which a lot of patients have. There is no transparency, there is no openness, the doctor doesn't respect the patient, there are 50 patients, the doctor's never on time, the doctor's running late, it's a long list of complaints. And I think doctors are now also increasingly getting worried and scared. When you hear about all Dr. Watson and IBM with all this fancy new stuff, artificial intelligence, clinical decision support systems, machine learning, are doctors going to become obsolete? And you read these articles every once in a while. Do doctors have a role to play anymore? Guess what? The patient will type in the symptoms. I have a headache, I have a fever, I have falana dikana. And then you'll get an answer. Oh, this is what your diagnosis is. So you go to an online pharmacy, whether it's Pharmeasy or NetMeds. So you self-diagnose, you self-prescribe, you do everything. So really, what role is a doctor going to play? This is one of the worries which actually doctors have started having. But I think doctors forget that the way a consumer behaves when you're buying a book from Amazon.com, or you want to watch a movie on Book My Show, or you want to go for a holiday, for a trip, is very, very different, because these are consumers. But when you're a patient, you're not a consumer, trust me, you're scared. Am I going to die? Does this headache mean I have a brain tumor? You do a Google search and of course you have a brain tumor, because everything is a brain tumor according to Dr. Google. So you need a human being who understands your fears and anxieties, who will hold your hand and will help you get better. And I think that's what doctors need to remember, that it's not just their medical expertise or their depth of technological knowledge which is going to give them an edge over something else. It's the fact that they are humans which makes them special. Evidence-based medicine is a buzzword, and that's a common criticism which people have levied against doctors, that we don't practice evidence-based medicine. We practice eminence-based medicine. I am the IVF specialist. I know what's right for the patient. I don't have to read any medical journals. I don't have to read any medical textbooks. I have 20 years of experience, and this is what the right thing is no matter what. That's not an attitude which is healthy for anyone. But the point is that it's only a human doctor who's willing to be curious, who's willing to be humble, and who has integrity, who can actually put this all together. He uses his human clinical judgment, he keeps up with evidence medicine, and he can understand the patient's preferences and then decide. Because I think this is something we forget, that doctors do not treat lab reports. We do not treat angiograms, we do not treat x-rays, we treat patients. So exactly the same angiogram in two different patients, one of whom has a healthy lifestyle and someone who's quite happy and contented staying at home, is going to be treated completely differently, not based on the recent scientific evidence, but based on the doctor's clinical judgment and what the patient wants. I think the important message I want to give you guys is doctors need to reinvent themselves. What worked 50 years ago is no longer going to work today, and definitely 50 years from now, which is when you guys are going to be starting practicing, you're going to have to keep on reinventing yourself. And remember this, it's not necessarily the guy who comes first in college who's the smartest who has the right to win. It's the someone who has the ability to ask questions, the someone who's willing to learn, because the reality is, and unfortunately your professors mostly won't tell you this, but 50% of what they teach you is wrong, and no one knows which 50% is wrong. And you know, I mean, I can go back to read my medical college textbooks and say, what rubbish, we don't do any of this. And that's fine, that's the nature of the beast. That's what being young is so exciting, because you're at the cutting edge, not only of absorbing these changes, but of actually leading them. And that's where you actually have an advantage over more senior, established doctors who are happy to continue doing what they've been doing for donkey's years. And I'll come back to that. So this is typically what we expect from our students, right? That you will sit in a library, you will absorb all this knowledge, all of which is extremely important. but please don't limit yourself to that is my request. You obviously need that. You need a sound foundation. Without that sound foundation, nothing's going to happen. And that's what symbiosis can offer you. But a sound foundation is not enough. You need to build on it. And the one thing which an institution like Symbiosis should teach you is not facts or knowledge, but the ability to keep on learning, to becoming self-learners, to give you the confidence that yes, no matter what change occurs, you'll be able to cope with it. This, of course, is what we all dream for. And here are some examples I'm going to give you of the various things which people have tried in order to make technology a little more friendly. So there's this great little device called HeartBuds. You have a smartphone. It's already got so many sensors and speakers within it. You just connect a little device, and now, otherwise what happens is the doctor puts the stethoscope and the patient's always wondering, what is he listening to? What does he mean by this murmur? Is everything all right or not? And especially when the doctor puts the stethoscope and frowns. And the reason he's frowning is because, oh God, my wife told me to buy this and I forgot it. And what is the patient going to feel? Oh God, he's frowning while listening to my heart. There must be something wrong with me. Patients get so scared. If you did this, the patient would be able to listen to what the doctor was listening, and the doctor would be able to explain to the patient, look, this is what it is, this is normal, this is reassuring, whatever else it is. Simple things which anyone of can make changes. Again, in the old days, and you should sometimes visit medical museums and you should see what the old-fashioned ECGs used to be like. It was about half a room full just in order to get an ECG done. And today there are so many of these devices available that you can actually see the ECG on a phone. And the moment you can do it on a phone, you can transmit it to anyone in the world who will be happy to help you interpret it. So that's another example. This is exciting. I could never ever see the retina as a medical student. I mean, we had to, and then dikhta hai ki nahi, fundus dikh raha hai ki nahi, haan dikh raha hai. Anyway, never mind, no one knew. What else could you say? Yeah, everything's fine. But the moment you start doing things like this, you can't bluff, you can't cheat. But the technology is helping you to be able to do things which otherwise you may not have been able to do. It's allowing you to document it, it's allowing you to share it. And you know what? The beauty is the person who's holding the smartphone is not a doctor. The person who's holding a smartphone is just an other relative who's actually being able to take pictures of the fundus and then share it again. So this is some of the magic which is starting to happen. In the past, doctors would take pride in the fact that only I understand what a stethoscope is, only I can look through an audioscope, only I can look through an otoscope, ophthalmoscope. These were the fancy technological tools which we used. ECGs were all little squiggles. I still can't make any sense of them, but an ECG, oh wow, this is what it means. But the moment you start doing like this, you're demystifying medicine. You're removing that jargon. You're helping patients to be more in control of their life. So they respect you. And then when you make suggestions, they understand why you're making these suggestions. So the trust factor actually increases. Lots of exciting things. So for example, asthmatics use inhalers all the time. How many times do they use the inhaler? Are they using it properly? Do they use it more at one particular season, one particular time of the day, in one particular geography? You're starting to get all that information. IoT stands for Internet of Things. You can put sensors on all these things. This is valuable information for the patient because the patient starts seeing patterns. Oh, most of my attacks happen during the monsoon or whatever else it is, or most of my attacks happen at 6 o'clock in the morning. So this is when I need to do some preventive steps in order to prevent it from happening. The doctor also realizes if he takes this medicine, it's not as effective. So you're collecting all this data, sharing it with the patient. So you're allowing the patient to become an expert on their own problem. Remember, the patient will respect you even more when you explain to the patient what is going on. So there's absolutely no need for you to feel threatened. So the question is, how can we help doctors to become more innovative? Because that's the right time to start, when they're medical students, when they're young, not when they're atherosclerotic, fossilized guys like me, where it kind of becomes harder and harder over time. The one great thing you guys have is young brains. That's a big advantage. Learn to make the most of it. So this is what we said, and where are we going to get the medical students? Obviously in places like JJ Hospital, which is where we started. This is not JJ Hospital, this is Stanford University. They have a biodesign lab, which they've been running for the last 10 years. It's a great model of excellence. How do you put engineers and students, medical doctors, PhDs, everyone together in a room to come out with stuff which is innovative? And the beauty is, Symbiosis can replicate that. Actually, Symbiosis can do a much better job. And the reason Symbiosis can do a much better job is you have far more patients, you have far more students. Your students are actually cleverer than the students who go to Stanford. They don't realize it as yet. But I think if you can put that together, your ability to be able to create magic and become a world leader is enormous. And I hope you guys will take advantage of this. And Dr. Ashish has this opportunity for making this a reality. So we're trying to do this in our own little way. Of course, working in JJ Hospital, government setting, it has a few limitations, but I don't think we should look for limitations. We should look for opportunities. You don't have to, start big. You can dream big. We all have the right to dream big, but you need to start small and you need to start earning the right to be able to actually execute on a larger scale. So this is a medical student from JJ, and this is a little bedwetting sensor which they created. So actually all the stuff is there. So what happens when a patient wets the bed? So there are sensors, so actually an alarm goes off. Lots of applications which could be done. A lot of these things are available. These are called moisture sensors. Why can't we actually do these things? And why should we wait for engineers to be doing these things? Because we see our patients on a daily basis. We understand our patient pain points, and the reality is lots of doctors come up with excellent ideas. But you know what? The tragedy is these ideas die with them because they don't know how to implement these. They don't know how to execute these. They don't know how to talk to engineers to create prototypes to actually make any of this come true. And now the beauty is within this you actually have a medical design unit. You have an entrepreneurship cell. So you have the ability to make a lot of this magic happen. Medical technology is no question about it, exciting space. It's a long list, whether it's EMRs, whether it's apps, whether it's chatbots. I'll discuss some of this stuff. Especially for older people, some of this stuff can get really intimidating. God, genomics, biotechnology. Most of us slept during our immunology and genetics lectures in class. And anyway, whatever we learned is no longer relevant. A lot of this, who understands anything about CRISPR and Cas9? Most doctors absolutely don't. The big tragedy is they do not even acknowledge that they don't know, because you know what? You're the doctor, you're the expert in the room. You can't let anyone know that you don't know. So you bluff, you pretend all kinds of rubbish. But in any case, the point is that this is where the future is headed. And the magic always occurs at the cutting edge of two fields, at the boundaries of two fields. And that's again the edge which you guys have. Because no one is actually stopping you from learning bioinformatics and applying that to medicine. No one is stopping you from learning how you can apply DNA sequencing, and that's the edge which you guys should be thinking about. But of course, this is the way we think of doctors, right? Old, reading textbooks, keeping themselves up to date. Doctors don't understand technology, but that's not true. And the reason that's not true is because this is a setting lots of doctors are very comfortable with. There is so much technology in a neonatal intensive care unit. There's so much technology in an MRI scanner and an ultrasound scanner. So it's not like doctors aren't comfortable with technology. They need to know how that technology can be used to help their patients. They don't fall in love with technology just for the sake of technology. It's got to be used actually. And this is what I need to emphasize, that there's great hope, but unfortunately there's a lot of hype and a lot of harm. And this is a big problem now in the US, because what happens is that, oh, fancy new thing, where can we do this? Why don't we try this? This is called the shiny new object. And then of course everyone wants to be the first person in India doing this, or the first person in Pune or Mumbai or whatever doing this. And as a result of which a lot of this technology starts getting abused, misused, overused, none of which is great. And here is a great example. And again, I'm going back to Google. We'll all acknowledge that Google is one of the most admired companies in the world. They employ the smartest technologists, programmers, anyone. And they came up with this clever idea. You have diabetics, right? You want to monitor their blood sugar on a regular basis. Diabetics hate having to take puncture, these things and do it. So how can we do it 24/7, continuously, and non-invasively? That's the holy grail, right? So these clever Google engineers said, you know what? Why don't we create a smart contact lens? And we'll constantly measure the blood sugar level in the tears, in the eyes, and that will instantly tell us, using a sensor, what's happening to the blood sugar levels, and if there's a problem, it drops or it's too high, we'll be able to collect all this data and be able to figure it out. Great idea? How many of you think this is a great idea? I think it's a great idea. If you told a diabetic you don't need to puncture yourself, you're going to get blood sugar readings 24/7, why would you not do it? The problem is, after they spent millions of dollars on this, they realized there is no sugar in the tears. Sounds funny, maybe if they had a doctor in the room giving them advice before they got to this stage, they wouldn't have ended up wasting so much money. So lots of stuff looks good on paper, but when you actually try implementing it, doesn't, because you sometimes forget the basics. But this is a bit of a problem, whenever doctors are faced with computers or tablets or medical software or anything else, they get a little bit scared for extremely good reason, because lots of doctors have actually burnt their fingers in the past, because a lot of this software in the past used to be created by engineers who had no idea what a doctor's problems were. So they would copy and paste some EMR which was created in the US in Mayo Clinic, which is fine when you have 25 minutes in order to see an educated, literate patient who has all the time in the world, who's paying you $100 for the consultation. Do you think this is going to possibly work in an OPD when you have 50 patients waiting outside, when you have exactly 2 minutes in order to make a diagnosis and move on? That's a big problem. As a result of which, lots of doctors said, forget it, I'm never going to touch a computer again in my life, I wasted enough money. But it's not just in India, this is a big problem even in the US. And there are great articles called Death by 1,000 Clicks. Because today, when a doctor does something on a pen and paper is versatile. I can say, just do this, end of the story. In order to do the same thing on an EMR, that doctor would have to go through 20 screens and 25 clicks. And beyond a particular point, doctors would say, I'm not a clerk, I'm not a peon, I haven't spent 10 years in order to be sitting in front of a computer screen. And patients were so angry, because doctors weren't spending time looking at them or at their faces. They were spending time with their head buried in the computer screen. Not a great way of practicing medicine. So again, the good thing is technology is improving, not there yet, but a lot of it is cloud-based, a lot of it is what is called predictive, so you don't have to do too much typing. And I think in the future, a lot of it is going to be voice recognition based. So at some point, you're going to say, hey Siri, take a note. And Siri will then populate the note so that you're not going to have to do it yourself. And the great thing is the patient will be able to know exactly what the note has. So you're getting rid of the problems of illegibility, of actually scribbling things, of creating digital data, but doing it painlessly without making the doctor share a burden, which is actually not really the doctor's job, which is forcing them to do lots of things, which I think is unfair. Having said this, and perhaps this is not relevant for the young guys in this room, but for a lot of the older doctors, this has become a problem. And I think unless older doctors learn to adopt some of this new technology, they're not going to be comfortable with their students doing this. So, what do you think the answer to this question is? How do you eat an elephant, anyone? One bite at a time, right? And that's exactly the same way. You don't have to master all this right from day one. So, especially, it's not such a problem for all the young kids in this room. You're all what we call digital natives. You've started using computers, you're extremely comfortable. A lot of the older people aren't. So, especially for the older doctors, I think this is a huge opportunity where you can catch up. The young guys are digitally friendly, but they don't have much clinical context, they haven't seen too much patients, they don't have clinical experience. You spend a lifetime doing that. It's much easier to acquire digital skills than for them to acquire clinical skills. So play to your strengths. You don't have to do it yourself. Get hold of a young student to shadow you, to observe you. There are lots of classes for senior citizens. Your juniors will teach you if you are respectful and willing to learn. The best thing is to have a grandchild. They do things so easily and so effortlessly, so sometimes that helps. And there's lots of things which are available online. The important thing is you should be willing to learn, and don't underestimate your ability to learn. The trick is to make it fun, which means you like photography, then use the digital camera on your smartphone, play around with it. And the beauty is once you start using it for taking photographs, you'll start learning lots of other things at the same time. And then your phone will no longer look so strange or unfamiliar. And the same thing will happen whether you're using a tablet, whether you're using a laptop. You like singing? Lots of clever apps available to help you make a better bathroom singer if nothing else. So use the digital karaoke system. I think all of us have started doing this. These are just logical next steps which we need to do. I think especially for older doctors, this is the message I would give them. Don't forget that you are the expert, at least in certain areas, and the rest of the stuff you're smart enough to pick up. There are two things I'd suggest. Especially when there are healthcare startups, it's a great opportunity for doctors to mentor them, to provide them with the clinical expertise, to encourage them. Why don't you come to my clinic, spend a week so you'll understand the problems which I face. You'll understand the problems which my patients face so that together we can apply our mind and come up with solutions which help everyone. And I think being an angel investor is a great way of doing this because you can actually then put your money where your mouth is, which is why that's something I really enjoy. And I think this is an important slide because typically as doctors, this is what we tend to do. One patient at a time, one patient. It's important. I'm not disputing that. I love seeing patients. I enjoy it. And when that patient is in front of you, that patient is the most important person in the world. No two ways about it. But really, if you want to create an impact beyond your clinic, beyond the four walls, you need to start thinking like an engineer. Now, we don't want doctors to get engineering degrees. Please don't get confused. It's just a mindset we want them to adopt. And the great thing is it's possible to do that. Lots of digital tools, even to help you better become clinicians. What I think of it is what I call my peripheral brain. So at some point, really, why do I need to know what the dose is? Why do I need to know what the brand name is? Why the hell do I need to know any of this stuff? In any case, it keeps on changing. I'll just look it up. A lot of doctors are scared to look up things in front of their patients because they feel the patient will say, "Arey yaar, ye doctor ko to kuch malum nahi hai." Actually, if you tell the patient, "You know what, I want to give you the latest information, let me look it up for you. And I will show you how to look up information so that if you have questions in the future, you can look it up yourself," that patient will respect you even more. So don't be scared about saying, "I don't know," or don't be scared about saying, "Let's find out together." So you don't have to fill up your brain with a lot of rubbish. You can keep it for the important stuff and use this stuff. So things like brand names, prices, you can find all that stuff online. Lots of doctors are using WhatsApp anyway, informally. Lots of clever things. Patient simulation apps. There are some great apps which will actually create a clinical scenario and you have to see whether you can save the patient's life or you end up killing the patient. Just a simulation, it's just a digital patient, so it doesn't matter, but better to kill digital patients than to kill real life patients. Anyway, lots of other stuff. You can do continuing medical education using this thing. When you have presentations, you can share them on SlideShare. That's what I do with all my presentations so that other people can improve those presentations. Ultimately, the important thing is to get the message across. How does it matter who's giving the message? The message remains the same. And I think LinkedIn is something I find extremely helpful. Lots of portals, because sometimes doctors kind of think of themselves as special. We don't want to hang out where the patients are, so we don't want to go where Facebook is. We want something which is exclusively for doctors. So fair enough, lots of doctor-only communities, whether it's Curify, Daily Rounds, a lot of which is being tailored for the doctor's needs. If you remember nothing else from this entire presentation, just remember this, and I'll tell you why. I think a doctor needs to keep up with the literature, and that's something we often fail to do, partly because we're so busy taking care of patients. I actually use my patients as research assistants, and I don't pay them for it. I tell them, this is the information you require. You can do a literature search on PubMed, and PubMed has become really easy. That's the National Library of Medicine. Figure it out. This is what you should be looking for. And when you then find out the abstract, you can go to this website. It's a great website. It's an illegal website, but that doesn't change the fact that it's great. You can go to sci-hub.tw, type in what is called the DOI, and you will get the full text of any medical journal article anywhere in the world without paying a single naya paisa. And the reason I think this is great is because I think a lot of these medical journal publishers make billions of dollars for doing nothing, and they actually deprive us and our patients from access to information which could be life-saving. If I need to know what to do with a patient with a particular problem and I cannot access New England Journal of Medicine because I can't afford to subscribe to it, that's not fair on my patient. Here's a great solution. So check it out, and I think it will keep you much more confident. And you know what they do? They actually print out the medical journal article. They share it with me. It becomes a part of the medical record. They become smarter. I become smarter. Everyone else. But you know, much more importantly, they have realistic expectations. They understand the limitations of what medical science can do. They understand that IVF doesn't have a pregnancy rate of 100%. So that when the IVF cycle fails, the first thing they do is not blame me, because they already know that the success rate has its own limit and that no matter what I do, we're not going to be able to get it to 100%. So the trick is respect your patients, they will respect you back. This is simple enough, right? Doctors are simple people, yaar. You give me more patients, everything else falls into place. Yes or no? I have more patients, I have more prestige, more brand name, reputation. I get invited for conferences like this. I earn more money. I mean, everything else is then automatically secondary, right? The reality is that patients are also looking for doctors, but they're not just looking for any doctor. They're looking for the doctor who's right for them. What are you doing in order to make it easy for the patients to find you? That's the question which patients need to ask. And going back to Google, everyone knows that the moment you don't know what to do, you do a Google search. And people will do Google searches for medical information, finding out the doctor. That's not going to change. Let's accept that. But, as I told you right in the beginning, I have a headache. Yes, you have a brain tumor. Which is actually good for doctors because, arey, maine Google kiya, mujhe brain tumor hai, I better go to a neurosurgeon. Sorry, kidding apart, but this is what happens. But you know what? What we forget is, when patients do this, they don't do this because they like doing it. They don't do it because they enjoy doing Google searches. They do it because we as doctors have let them down. We have failed in our responsibility of educating our patients. Does anyone know where the word doctor is derived from? Sorry? Nikhil, not you. Come on. We're meant to be talking to... Nikhil is a professor. So, you know, we need students to provide answers. But okay, fine. He's answered that. Doctors derive from the word dossier, which means to teach. That's why you have a PhD or a doctorate, which means the most important role of a doctor is actually patient education, which you do one-on-one, one at a time in your clinic. But when you have the internet, why aren't you willing to do it on a much larger scale? Why are you remaining restricted? When we send our patients to Dr. Google, this is what happens. Patients are unhappy, doctors are unhappy because patients come up with printouts of irrelevant, wrong, outdated, completely, irritating information which gets my blood pressure up, and then you look at it and say, throw it away. I don't want to see this. This is all rubbish. But it's our fault. You know, why are they going to Dr. Google? Because we are not providing them with reliable sources of information. And I think this is what doctors need to do. We need to prescribe websites for our patients. We need to prescribe apps for our patients, reliable apps. And why are they reliable? They're reliable because we have created themselves ourselves. So we can vouch for the information. So the patient doesn't have to waste their time. I think this is something which doctors need to remember. That what makes us special is we provide compassionate care. We became doctors because we want to help patients to become better. And patients need to be able to trust us. So it's not like we're cheaper than someone else. That's not the reason why people come to you. They come to you because they know that they're going to get better care because you care about them. I think this is a big problem still. And when I use the word positioning, in one sense, it's a marketing technical term. It's how do patients think about you? Patients have limited buckets in their head. You know, everyone perceives people in a slightly different fashion. And I think this is the truth. Now, typically 50 years ago, all your marketing was word of mouth marketing. There really wasn't any other method. You looked at patients one at a time, you did a good job. That patient would tell 10 other patients, you would tell 10, yeah, this guy is a good doctor, you can trust him. That is still the most important method, trust me. That's called organic marketing, and that's invaluable. If you have one patient who has good things to say about you, they will send 10 other patients. None of that is going to change. But how are patients going to know you exist in this day and age when there are so many distractions like Facebook, Tinder, Instagram, whatever else, TikTok, not TikTok, right? Not anymore, sorry. But there's just so many other things. So how are patients even going to possibly remember that doctors are there? And I think this is what the tragedy is. Doctors are marketing themselves, but they're doing it unethically. They're doing it by, हाँ, तू मुझको patient भेज, मैं तुझको 50% cut दूंगा. I mean, I just think that's such a shameful thing. But effectively, everyone's starting to do that. And then it's easy to justify. मैं नहीं करूँगा तो भूखा मरूँगा. मेरा senior भी करता है, मेरा professor भी करता है. मैं तो कम से कम सिर्फ 30% देता हूँ, वो तो 50% देता है. We all justify all this rubbish all the time. And the reason we do it is because we're not aware that there are healthier alternative models which we can adopt. So instead of wasting money, giving 50% of it, बेचारा tax officer 35% ले लेता है, जो GP भेजेगा वो 50% ले लेगा, तो तुम्हारे पास रहेगा क्या? So therefore, instead of wasting time giving cuts and kickbacks, you need to create a position for yourself, and the best way to do it is digitally. So is marketing ethical? Of course it's ethical, because it depends on what your definition of marketing is. Patients need doctors, doctors need patients. What you're doing when you're marketing is you're telling them why you are the right doctor for them. That's the most important message. And this way you're directly reaching out to patients. You're cutting out the middleman. Then there is absolutely no need to give a cut or a kickback, because the patient is coming directly to you. And the patient now trusts you because you're providing them the information directly yourself. Lots of digital marketing platforms. Again, I think these are just fancy, expensive middlemen. I don't think this is a great way of doing it. I think the solution is every doctor needs their own website. In fact, I would go one step further. I would say every student needs their own website. I would say the moment you entered Symbiosis, create your own website. Whatever your name is, whatever you want to be, medicalstudentintraining.com or futureneurologist.com or anything. There's no shortage of website addresses. That is valuable digital real estate, and that will keep on helping you throughout your life. The next time you want a promotion, the next time you want a job, the next time you want to prove to people what you've done, what you've been able to accomplish. And it allows what I call zero cut practice. And the reason is simple. Patients want what I call information therapy, but they don't want it from Google. They don't care about what's happening in Mayo Clinic. They want to know what's happening in La Vallée. They want to know what's happening in Passion. They want to know where is the pharmacy, where is the CT scanner, and you can provide this. Guess why? Because A, you know this information, they trust you. You can't put up rubbish information on your website. You'll get into serious trouble if you do that. And you will put up this information in Marathi, because that's what your patients want to read, understand. You will put up videos of yourself talking to them in Marathi. Imagine the amount of trust. So by the time they come to you, they don't have to listen to all that thing again. They've already listened to that video before they came, and they'll forget half of what you tell them. But you know what? You can say, I know you'll forget, but go back and watch this video again. Or go share it with your mother-in-law, or go share it with your uncle in the US. He will tell you, yes, the advice which I'm giving you is reliable, correct advice. You're saving yourself time, because it's very boring saying the same thing again and again. You're saving your patients time, and you're creating trust, which is invaluable. Just a few short slides on what you need to do. Again, the best thing is to actually do it. It's fun. I promise you, you will enjoy doing it. And it will help to keep you on the cutting edge, because you will learn so many new technological tools, because you can't afford to get outdated. So put up content, refresh it all the time, so many things which you can do, and you should keep on trying new stuff. But you don't have to do this yourself, please. If you're young and you have time, please go ahead and do it. But if you're a practicing doctor, please pay someone else to do it. Get a professional webmaster. Just like if you're going to create your clinic, you're not going to kind of paint your walls yourself. You're not going to design it. You're going to get an architect to do it for you. Please do that for your website at all. But just putting up a website is not enough. You need to put valuable stuff on it, because there are lots of other websites. So make sure your website is on your stationery, it's on your letterhead. You can refer patients to it. You can tell your receptionist to tell your patients, lots of things, Again, answer emails all the time, regularly. Allow patients, tell them, I will send you an email once a week. So for example, if you're a pediatrician, you can actually tell them, patients have questions all the time, parents want to know. So you keep on feeding them information. Guess what will happen? 10 times, nothing. But the 11th time, when they say, oh, my kid has a fever, they just read that email. Where do I take my kid? Oh, right. This guy's been sending me emails regularly. He's a reliable guy. He cares about my kid. Why don't I just go to him instead of going to the pediatrician down the road? So this is how you actually create goodwill. Again, as I keep on telling you, your patients are still your best brand ambassadors. And if you have a website, you actually make it easier for them to refer other patients to you. Because you can tell them, don't go to the doctor, but at least check out his website. You'll get a lot of reliable information on pediatrics or diarrhea or infertility or IVF or whatever you want. What about social media? I think there's lots of buzz about it, and the reality is whatever is in fashion today will become obsolete 2 years from now, and 4 years from now it will reinvent itself. And it's fashionable, but again, don't waste time on it. You're a professional. You're using this for valuable stuff. So experiment. Choose one channel which works well for you. So, if you're a pediatrician, maybe Facebook works well for you, or Instagram or what. I don't have the answers. But experiment, decide, and then stick to it. But don't waste time on this just because you enjoy doing it. Again, the reason I use the word frenemy is it's a portmanteau word of friend and enemy. Google can be your enemy because it sends patients away elsewhere, makes them waste their time. It can be your friend. It's up to you. It's not going away anywhere. Trust me. And if you actually teach your patients how to use the website cleverly, you can actually use Google as your friend. And I've been doing this for many, many years. So, I run an IVF clinic. Competitive business, as Dr. Datar will tell you, lots of IVF clinics. Har gali gali mein khul raha hai. We've never given a single naya paisa as a cut to any doctor. Now I know that I can increase my workload. I could triple it tomorrow if I was willing to give kickbacks, which lots of other IVF clinics do. Easy source of income, what difference does it make? We made a conscious decision that, the patients who will come to us because they trust us. So I'm not answerable to some third party, and I don't have to worry about keeping his interests first. I can do what's right for the patient. And sure, it takes longer, it's a slower process, but at least at the end of the day, I think I can sleep well. We've created an IVF app. Now, I don't understand anything about how to create an app, but you know what? I can find someone to create an app for me. So this is what I call my sandbox or my playground. It's great. I learn a lot about how to create apps. I don't do it myself, but my webmaster does it, teaches me. I learn what APKs are. I learn what platforms are. I learn what other people are doing in the ecosystem. So it helps to keep me fresh and updated all the time. I think this is really what we want from students. It's a great place to be an Indian. Trust me about that. The economy is booming. There's no reason why we won't become the world's largest economy. May take 5 years, may take 50 years. I don't have a timeline for that. And it all depends on how you measure this, whether you use purchasing power parity, whether you measure in US dollars, Indian rupees, it doesn't matter. But a lot of the most stable, mature economies in the world are plateauing out. Their population is becoming older. They're not doing creative new stuff anymore. You guys, this is a demographic sweet spot for this country. You're young, the country is growing, money is flowing in. You're actually in a magical place where a lot of this thing can happen. And you guys are the guys in the room who can actually make this happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable insight with us. I request Dr. Rajiv Yeravdekar, Dean, Faculty of Health and Biological Sciences, to felicitate our guest.
As usual, I'm going to share some personal trivia about Anirudha. One is he's from my fraternity, gynecologist. 20 years back, I visited his help library, and that's something which got me hooked on to Anirudha. And I thought it stood for health education for lay people. That was the nomenclature. And so the social bent of mind of his practice impressed me a lot. And since then, we've been interacting on an ongoing basis. He's got a lot of knowledge, experience to share with us. And whether it's a gynecological platform or platform like these, there are a lot of things to learn. His way of presentation, and he spoke about social media, the power of social media. And youngsters like you are hooked onto social media. But as a gynecologist in a lighter vein, I just got a message on WhatsApp the other day about a patient complaining to her friends, my gynecologist is following me on Instagram. I wonder what he's still looking for.
Tea time is a chance to slow down, pull back, and appreciate our surroundings. I invite all the delegates.
Do we have time for questions or we should take a tea break? I'm around in any case.
I've got a couple of things to say, Dr. Malpani. I just want to say there is a fantastic talk and every word is important for all of you out there. But three things interesting applying to your talk. Number one, my school friend from Ajmer went to USA, Harvard. He was a brilliant guy with epilepsy. And the doctor in the 1970s in Harvard told him, please don't mind, your drugs are very complicated. I want to make sure there's no interaction. So he took out a book in those days. There was no computer, hard copy as we call it. And my friend was so happy that the doctor took the trouble to consult a book before talking to him. A. B. For those of you who feel that prescription writing is still a must, there's a solution called Docs Per Meet Me in the tea break. I don't run it. But you can write a prescription on special paper. That prescription gets converted into WhatsApp, email, computer, in fact, your server system. But it's completely seamless. The doctor-patient walks into the OPD. The receptionist makes his papers. And that paper keeps moving special paper. And all the residents' notes, consultants' notes, everything gets on that paper. That's one. Last thing I want to say is, if you give a 2-minute speech to a doctor, we tell him to use it, that why he needs to use a computer and not a piece of paper, why he's talking to a patient. He can explain to the patient in 120 seconds why that computer is going to be more useful in the long run than looking at the patient's face. It will help. I do agree patients don't like it, but I also feel that they can be explained why it's so important. Thank you so much, doctor. Wonderful. Thank you.
You know, I always worry at the end of a consultation when patients don't ask questions. So my last thing is, do you have any questions? If they say no, I say either you haven't understood anything I've said, or you've understood everything, you know, which is fine, and I'm never really sure. So I'm always worried when no one asks questions after talk.
So I'm not asking a question again. So that should worry you, because I think your talk was so lucid that it left very little room for any question to pop up in that sense. But I'd like to, thanks. I mean, he really did a good job. I was wanting to tell you that this is a very good example of patient as partners approach, which we have now in healthcare coming up. And we've been talking about it for the past 2 days, that there's a gap between how many doctors India has and how many it should have. And I think using patients as your partners is a very simple and not very too much cost attached to it, not at all, actually. And it's a really wonderful thing that you use patients as your partners intelligently. First of all, training them, bringing them to that level, and then utilizing their resources. So it's really a wonderful opportunity, and it's really a wonderful thing that you've given so many apps. And I think that's the way to go, to make patients our partners in this healthcare journey. Yeah.
I will follow up on that. You know, doctors have so much goodwill. Unfortunately, the medical profession as a whole has frittered away that goodwill completely. That's tragic. Maybe it'll take another generation for it to come back. Maybe it won't. I don't know that. But I think patients have a soft corner for their doctors, and it's up to us to be able to respect them and to be able to help them. So patients get a great kick out of saying, you know, a lot of patients in Pune are computer engineers, for example. So a lot of patients will get, hey, I helped my doctor to create a software app, or I helped my doctor do this, that, or the other. And that's something we should be actually exploiting. And it's great for everyone. And that's what I keep on saying. Our ability to impact people is so much more, because we're a 1.2 billion people. No matter what a doctor in the US did, your impact is going to be limited. And if we guys don't do it, if we don't, you know, one thing I'll tell you which breaks my heart, there is more patient educational content in Gujarati from the National Health Service in the UK, because they create patient educational content because they have Gujarati patients in places like Birmingham, so they respect the minorities. Then Indian doctors create. I think we are consistency letting our patients down.
And if I may say so, the patients also have a lot of knowledge which is known as experiential knowledge. I mean, they have so much experience about their own disease, nobody will spend that much time thinking about their disease as themselves. And I think that is something which the doctors should take advantage of. And also the other patients suffering with similar conditions should be able to take advantage of. So to form patient groups and to interact patients together is, I think, one of the very, very effective ways and cheap ways or reasonable ways to sort of bridge the gap.
There are two other things. These are what I call expert patients. And I think expert patients are better at educating patients, because at some point the doctor is You know, you're not infertile yourself, doctor. You're not a woman yourself. What do you understand about
Exactly.
IVF? I go through it. Whereas one patient tells another patient, the credibility is so much more. And that actually is far more valuable because they use terms and metaphors which other patients understand, which no matter how empathetic I try to be, I'm never going to be able to do. So lots of positive things happening because you're creating patient communities. And if you eavesdrop on those communities, you learn so much about what a patient is thinking. Because within 4 minutes, a patient is not going to unload or unburden what's in their heart. But if they've done that, you've understood what their pain points are, you can actually proactively answer them. So I think you're absolutely right. Yes.
So thank you so much for that
Thank
talk.
you. I can hear you. Go ahead, speak up. Yes. Yes. So I think two things. One is you never know which company is going to be around. Whether you spend all that stuff on Liberate and then Liberate shuts down tomorrow, all your effort has gone down the drain. Not very smart. It's far better that you spend that same time and energy on creating your own digital real estate because that's not going to go away anywhere else. And in one sense, by outsourcing something which is so important, which is your digital presence, to someone else, you're effectively giving them the keys to your safe. Not a smart thing to do because today they will say one thing, after a year they will put the screws on, then they will accept advertising, and guess what? When you're listed as an ENT surgeon, there are 5 other ENT surgeons listed in the same space, and then tomorrow they will say, I'm going to give the first spot to someone else because he's giving me 5,000 rupees for a position. So effectively they will keep on squeezing you. So my suggestion is it's very tempting, it's a shortcut because they have all these great salesmen who will promise you the earth and the moon, and therefore you will sign up, and then afterwards you'll find it very difficult to back out. And then why are you being so lazy about it? This is an investment which you're making in yourself. I would say take the time and effort, create your own website for yourself. You're not beholden to anyone else, no matter what happens. So it's a shortcut, but don't take it is what I would advise because these are digital middlemen. There's no question about it.
Hi.
Thank you, Dr. Anirudha. It was a very
Sorry.
exciting presentation. You are very passionate. I just want to remind the delegates here what our Pro-Chancellor ma'am yesterday told. It's very relevant to Dr. Anirudha's talk. And it is a dream project of Dr. Raju sir and Vidya madam that marrying health with the technology. So next year when you come here, as you're ascending the hill, on the left side is the Symbiosis Institute of Technology. On the right side is HUSRC, the hospital. So we are going to marry health with technology. And you are invited for the wedding next year. So that is health and technology. So it is Health Technology Park, which is a unique campus in this part and I think in this country. Health Technology Park, which is a dream project of Dr. Raju and Dr. Vidya ma'am. Thank you.
Sorry, can we take one more question or are we done? Huh? Can we take one more question?
Yeah, okay, one last.
Yeah, hi, this side. Hi.
Sure, sorry.
So, my name is Dr. Ahmad. I'm a practicing pain physician from UK. आपका लेक्चर सुन के मुझे बहुत दुख हुआ है क्योंकि जो मैंने 1 साल में सीखा, अगर ये लेक्चर मैंने पहले 1 साल से I've been in India and I wish I'd heard this lecture 1 year back because I've got so many more tips which I can grow on. So thank you very much for that informative lecture. There's one thing which I would like to ask. So I'm here because coming back to India after 15 years, I did not know which side of law I stand on. So I made my website only to realize that it might be illegal to promote yourself. So I wasn't sure. So I registered for the Symbiosis medical legal course. Having read all the books and what they had to say, I'm not sure about this because as per the whatever act in 1953 or whatever year, it is still illegal to promote yourself. It is still illegal to brag about your achievements. It is still illegal to put your photo against any claim on any form of media, as they say. When are we going to move ahead from this, and what are your thoughts about this? You know, like, if by having such laws, we are giving a space to channels like Practo and Liberate and illegal practices. And I just want to know, what can we do? Like, one thing I learned was I'm not putting any pictures against whatever I claim. The website I have talks about patient education and does not say that I'm the best or I can do this. So I'm sure you have much more tips like this for all of us to enlighten us on how we can be on the right side of the law till it changes and still do the right thing.
I think great point. And let me tell you one thing. I've burnt my fingers. And typically what happens is whenever you put yourself out there, you're also creating a target in one sense. And given, like you correctly said, the archaic laws, the way things are, if someone chooses to pick on you, then sometimes it can get difficult. I'm not disputing that. But I think we also need to be a little proactive about this. At some point, we need to be able to put our patients first. And we need to be able to make some of these changes. Your point is, if suppose someone decides to complain about you and your website to the medical council, what happens? What kind of standing do you have? And you're absolutely right. The medical council can be extremely arbitrary. They can choose one particular clause. So some other doctor may put a photograph in a newspaper and they may choose to turn a blind eye to that. Or they may choose to pick on you because you happen to have a website, and what can you do about it? And I don't have any very easy answers for that, quite frankly, but I think we need to be able to move with the times. And I think if we start putting some of these test cases out there to be able to say what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, but I think the North Star is still very simple. What we need to keep on doing throughout our lifetimes is to put our patients first. And I think if we make that absolutely clear, and if during that process, there are some unforeseen consequences, some pain which you may have to suffer, I think so be it. You did it with the good intention, with your heart in the right place, and I think that counts more than anything else. So I would still not worry at all about it. Even though we've kind of been hurt in the past, I still think that's the right thing to do, and I will continue believing that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.